Hello and welcome on this Monday snowy evening. I wanted to take a few minutes and talk to you guys about a little bit of pre-processing that you can do inside Pandas when you're working in Google Colab and Jupyter Notebook to help you out with your group project with just a few things that I know are kind of coming your way. If you're tuning into this video just for some cool things that you can do with Python and specifically the Pandas library, welcome, welcome, welcome. It is focused specifically towards a class that I'm working in right now, but I think this is pretty applicable across the board for everyone. So let's just jump right in. This should be short and sweet. I don't think it'll take too much time, but hopefully this will help you out this evening as you're kind of plugging right along. So what you're looking at here is a data set I've got inside Excel. Now, why Excel? Because that's what you're comfortable with, right? You're comfortable with working in Excel. You've been doing it for several years. So let me show it to you in Excel. Then we'll jump into Jupyter and I'll show you what that's going to look like inside Colab. So I've got a data set of 500 data points. Okay. And what you've got is gender, height, weight, and an index column, which we don't actually need. And we're going to drop that index column once we get inside Pandas and we start working in Jupyter. Note the one thing I want you to pay attention to is we have some null values inside here that we're also going to want to deal with. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, well, why wouldn't I just do this in Excel? Excel's so much easier. And hey, I'm with you. I love Excel as well. But what you're finding is, and you'll continue to find, is that when you get into big data sets, Excel doesn't work that well. It starts to slow down quite a bit. And your 60,000 line data set that you're working with right now, it's starting to labor a little bit in Excel, depending on your computer. So I wanted to give you this cool little video to show you some pre-processing stuff that you can do before you get into your regressions and all the other stuff you'll work with as you work on the group project. So let's just jump right in. So here's what I've done. I've already uploaded this file to Google Drive. So what I'm going to do is open a new Jupyter notebook. And that'll take just a second to get that up and going. So we want a new collaboratory notebook, which will open up like so. And there we go. So the first thing we want to do with that Colab notebook is we're going to want to mount our Google Drive. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to mount my Google Drive. And we're going to let that do its thing while it chugs right along, while it thinks. It takes a minute sometimes to load Google Drive. There it is. So you'll note that under my drive, in my regression folder, inside that, I've got several versions of this file that we're working on, but specifically the one I want is this one, the null XLSX file. All right. So we're going to go over here and we're going to start by importing our pandas library. So import pandas as PD. As you may remember, that PD is just an alias, which means that when I'm working with this, I don't have to actually type the word pandas. I can simply do PD for pandas. And I'm going to go, actually, we'll start with DF for data frame, right? So we're going to create a new data frame. And I'm going to go PD.read. Okay, so pandas.read underscore Excel. And what I need to do is pass in the entire file path and the name of the file that I want to work with that's on my Google Drive. Now that's a long file. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to paste it in, and I need to delete my extra quotations here like so. Now if I did this right, boom, there we go. We've loaded it. Okay, so step one, data is loaded into Colab. So there are a couple of things you learned in the last video if you're kind of walking through the videos that I've done working in Colab. And you know that you can do DF for data frame. And when I do DF for data frame, it's just going to show me the head and the tail of the data. So the first 5 and the last 5 rows of data that you'll see. So you'll see all those columns. You'll see the null values. You'll see the head. You'll see the tail. So a couple cool little tricks. So you know that you have the ability to do df.head. And if I do that, right, so data frame, just the head, it's going to show me the first 5. But I can do a slight modified version if I wanted. So I could do df3, df head, and pass in the number 3 instead of just leaving that blank. And when I do, it's going to show me the first 3 rows. Just something nifty you can do if you wanted to see maybe just the first row or something like that. And you can do the same thing with df.tail, and it'll show me the last 3. Okay. Last 3. Now, if you're confused for a second and you notice that you see 499, remember that it starts with 0, not 1. So that would be 500 rows starting with 0 and not 1. Okay. So the next thing we kind of want to fiddle around with here is we want to take a second and explore. Well, actually, before we even do that, let's get rid of that index column that we really don't need. So to get rid of the index column, it's actually fairly simple. We're just going to use the drop method. So we'll go df.drop like so. And I'm simply going to tell it the name of the column I want to drop. So I want to drop, sorry, my pointer's in front of it here. I want to drop the index column like so. Okay. But I'm not quite done. So I'm gonna actually have to say axis 1, and I'm gonna have to say in place true. Alrighty. Now if I look at that, now all of a sudden that index column is gone. Now before we continue, what's this in place equals true all about? So the in place equals true is basically saying that when I do this, I don't want this to change, like to revert back. I need this to stay permanently. So now when I work with this inside my Colab file, it's always going to be there. It's not going to go away. And that's what we wanted, right? So in place equals true is a good thing. You need to do that or it's going to come back if you keep working. So we want that to stay. So that's our first challenge we've overcome. But we've got a couple other challenges we want to fiddle around with. One of them is these null values. So we know that there is a method you could call called isNull. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you all these values back. So df isNull is basically going to say false for anything that's not null. So if there's a value, for example, in the first row of the gender column, there's a value. So that's why it says false. But notice if you go to the third row of the height or the weight column, it says true. And the reason it says true is because if I go back up to the top, there is a null value. NaN is not a number. Okay. So that's a problem. We don't want that. We need that to be fixed. Now, before we continue, there's some analysis we could do to figure out what to do to pre-process this. If there's just 1 or 2 missing values, conceivably, we could just drop the row if there's 1 or 2 missing values. Now, if there's a lot, we may have to do something different, like substitute values in, maybe take the mean, maybe take the median, something of that nature. We've got to figure that out. So to figure that out, we're going to keep working with this, but we're going to go df.isNull, and we're going to sum up all the nulls. So I'm saying sum after df isNull, and what that's going to do is it's going to add up all the trues. And what it's saying is, well, there's nothing missing in gender, there's nothing missing in height, but there are 2 values missing in weight. Now, there's 500 observations in this data, so you probably could just drop those 2 rows and be okay. But I want to show you a couple other things we can do that would be nifty instead of dropping those 2 rows. So the first thing I want to do is just show you how to calculate mean, for example. So if I say df.weight.mean, it's going to tell me that the average weight for everything in the data set is 106 pounds. Okay, df.weight.mean. Okay, so what I can do from here is I can jump around and I can fill my values, my missing values, with that weight, right? So I could go df.fill NA. Okay, df.fill.na, and from there I could pass in my mean value. So my df.fill.na could be df.weight.mean, like so. Now we're not quite done there, because if I do this, what's going to happen is it's not going to actually go back into my data set. So I can do it once. Let's do it slightly differently. So we'll just do it like so. So I'll jump up here and I'll go AVG weight like so. Give me just a second. I'll explain what I'm doing. And then I'll jump down here, and I got 2 creative here. So we'll take this away, and we'll go AVG weight like so. And we'll do df.weight.fill.na like so, and make sure we've spelled that correctly. Give me 1 sec, I'll explain what I'm doing. And now we're cooking. There we go. Okay, so now we're cooking. So here's what I did slightly differently. I got a little too creative. I tried to do the weight calculation, the average weight calculation inside the fill NA. We don't want to mess around with that. So let me explain to you what I did. So I declared a variable called average weight. and average weight is the mean of the weight column. Okay, so then I use the weight column fill in a option, and I passed in that average weight that I just calculated up here. So I'm saying in the df.weight fill in a, so the missing values, we're going to pass in the average weight, and that's what we've done. Now here's my problem. Okay, if I go back and look at my data frame again, dang, look at that. That null value came back. So the null value came back because I actually need to go back in and say, and we'll just cheat and copy this to make it a little bit easier. We will say df.weight equals like so. So note that it did it once here, but when I looked at my data frame again, well, it reverted back and it gave me weight with not a number is in here. So we're going to pass this in. And now if I look at my data frame, look at that. So where I had a null value before, my 106 came in. Now I kind of stumbled a little bit there for a second. So let me go back and show you exactly what I did to make this work. But at this point, you are good to go. Your data's got the mean value substituted in where we needed it. And there are a couple different ways we could do. So we could pass in a 0 value, for example. So if I did df weight fill in a 0, what that would do is it would pass in a 0 value instead. But in this particular case, it seemed to be a good idea to pass in an average weight. So let's jump back up and I'll show you exactly what I did. So one more time, what I did is I declared a variable here called average weight. And I'm saying that the average weight for the weight column is the data frame column weight mean. That's all that is. So then I jump down and I'm saying, all right, well, the data frame weight fill in a method. So the null values in the data frame, we're going to replace those null values with the average weight, which I declared up here. Average weight declared up there. Okay. Now, when I did that and I looked at my data frame, first time I did it, it worked. But then when I went and I printed my data frame right here, well, it reverted right back to where it was until I went back and said, hey, the entire data frame weight column, okay, we're going to fill all the null values with the average weight that we calculated it before. And once I did that, boom, I print the data frame. Now where I had my null value, I get 106 instead of NaN for not a number. And there you have it, friends. So that should translate pretty well for your group project. That should get you where you want to go. Don't feel bad if you are struggling with this right now. It is not easy and nobody's a master. Everybody fumbles. I fumble too. It's easy to do when you're having to type so much text. But what you'll find is that this is a really helpful tool when you get into it. Really handy dandy thing. And of course, I'm always around for questions if you have them. You guys have my personal email if you're in class with me. So give me a shout. Let me know. I wish you all the luck as we finish our last couple classes of the semester, and I will talk to you soon.